The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions of WBGR Network.
Good evening and welcome to Just Enough. We're here on another Thursday evening. I'm glad you tuned in. Be sure to hit the like and the share button. Share this with all of your friends, neighbors, frenemies, and anybody else that you could think of. But tonight we are pleased to have our guest with us. She is what I like to call one of the leading experts in the world on domestic violence. She's a real sweet person. Have known her for a number of years. I had the privilege of working with her and watching her in action. And what we're going to tackle tonight, I knew that this would be the person for this show because we're tackling a real sensitive issue and something that's been on the rise since the pandemic. But let me stop right there and say this to everybody who's watching, okay? Please, we're still in the pandemic. Don't get excited and anxious or over anxious about this vaccine. We all know what we need to do, and whether you take it or you don't take it, just make sure that you're making a decision that's right for you and is settled in your spirit. I don't expect everybody to take it, and I'm not encouraging nor discouraging. I'm just saying don't let all of the news that's been coming out and some of the things that you're hearing and reading on social media and on television, don't let that get your anxiety too high, because you don't want to be in a situation where you end up making a decision based on emotion. Do what's best for you. But at the same time, I want to also encourage everybody to please continue to wear your mask. And not under your nose, but over your nose. The mask is designed to cover your entire face, okay? Let's protect each other. Let's care about each other. Let's do what we need to do to ensure the safety and well-being of not only ourselves, but for our elderly and for our children, okay? But again, we're here, and tonight's episode is on domestic violence, and we have with us Miss Sylvia Pauling, whom I'm going to kind of give a little bit about, but I'm not going to give too much. I'm going to let her do most of the talking about her, and then we're going to get into some back and forth. Please, if you're in the watch party, please comment, share, ask questions, and we will do our best to get to them and answer them. But Sylvia, thanks for coming. I appreciate you showing up. Tell our viewers a little bit about your background and your experience with domestic violence.
So, good evening. I've worked in the area of domestic violence for almost 30 years. I started in the trenches, in the field. I've worked in safe houses. I've supervised the non-residential counseling center for victims of domestic violence. I've worked in child welfare in the area of domestic violence, and now I have a private practice, and part of that practice is dedicated to survivors and perpetrators of domestic violence.
Okay. Say somebody wanted to get into the arena of domestic violence. Are there any special credentials that you need, any special education?
So there is some certifications around domestic violence, and there's a few colleges that offer an actual degree in domestic violence. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and some of the credentials I have, I'm a certified danger assessor, which is a tool that you're able to assess the danger for domestic violence, and it's a product of Dr. Jacqueline Campbell from Baltimore.
Okay. Well, she left out something. She's also served as a personal personal therapist and counselor for me when we work together as well, because you all know I have a penchant for sometimes getting a little offline. But let's really get into it. What made you decide to work with domestic violence specifically? I know that you're a licensed professional counselor. I know that domestic violence isn't something that a lot of people just look at, but I know that it's been on the rise the past few years. It's probably always been high, but the numbers probably weren't really counted as seriously as they are now. But what made you specifically decide to go into domestic violence?
So I don't know that I really decided to go into domestic violence. I think that the field actually found me.
Okay.
I interned in undergrad at a rape crisis center, and then after that, I moved to this area where I started working, not in the field of domestic violence, but then I started doing local programs. And so I think domestic violence, the field found me because after years of working, maybe 5 or 10 years in the field, my sister was actually brutally murdered by someone she met and was in a relationship with.
Okay. So this is a calling.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a calling. And that's why you are as effective as you have been. I've watched you when we worked at Child and Family Services. I watched you work with individuals who were from various backgrounds, didn't want to really share, but you had a way of reaching people that really impressed me. I watched you coach people through. I watched you be able to get people supportive services, and that's the thing that really stands out for me, is that you have an ability to connect with people who aren't the chosen ones, the less fortunate, shall I say, for lack of better words, or the underserved populations. And I just wanted to make sure I said that to you, because I got to give you your flowers now. But what are some of the co-occurring or mitigating issues that you see in dealing with victims?
Some of the things, besides the domestic violence, is there tends to be some mental health issues, some substance abuse, finances, struggling with finances, and struggling to find housing. Okay,
so it can actually start from anywhere, pretty much. So you're saying it's an argument can ensue over finances, substance use. Do you find a lot of people who are involved in domestic violence issues, do they have a lot of issues revolving around anger, or let me say it like this, unresolved anger?
And so we probably should back up and just kind of think about just the definition, because domestic violence is, in different states, the words domestic violence mean different things. But for the purpose of this of tonight, when you're looking at an intimate relationship, what we know is it tends to the violent incidents, or even the psychological or mental abuse, tends to be around power and control. And so it's one individual trying to have power and control over the other. And for the purpose of tonight, we're talking about an intimate relationship. So I think you asked, did it have anything to do with unresolved anger?
Like, say for instance, you're in an intimate relationship with someone who has suffered with anger management issues from a traumatic past, because trauma has a tendency to come out in some people in a form of anger. So I'm in a relationship with somebody, that anger is unresolved, and I tend to always get out of sorts when things don't go the way I think they should go. But wait a minute, that's kind of control too. But have you seen a lot of people that deal with anger as well as?
So there are some people that struggle with anger, but anger management is really not what domestic violence is really about.
Okay.
It is really about one individual trying to have control over the other. It doesn't mean that person doesn't get angry in that process, but individuals who have anger management issues, those issues tend not to just be for the intimate partner.
Okay.
So they tend to have anger management problems at work with whomever. So it's not just that intimate partner.
Okay. That's good information. That's really good information. And once again, we're here with Sylvia Pauling, domestic violence specialist of the Pauling Institute, and we're talking about domestic violence, trying to give you some background, some information so that you can better know what it is. And we're going to get into some signs and symptoms as well, but I just want to make sure you know who we are talking with tonight. We're in a pandemic situation. And what I heard the other night in watching CNN, I heard that there has been like 150% increase in two areas. One being substance abuse, which I knew was going to happen, but the other was domestic violence. So have you experienced some of the increase that you see that's happened since this pandemic has started?
Yes, there's a big increase. One, because we're stay at home, so
right.
Even in those opportunities, whether it's the abuser, perpetrator, or the victim, survivor who leaves out to go to work, and all of that, we're all still at home. And so we're seeing an increase. But one of the areas that we're not necessarily seeing an increase is hotline calls, because when you're stuck at home and you're at home with your perpetrator, it's difficult to contact someone. So the victims and survivors of domestic violence are very vulnerable now because they don't have that outlet. And so even for telehealth, it's hard to have a therapy session if your abuser is actually...
And I'm glad you said that. I'd never thought about that. Even with the telehealth situation, you got somebody in a situation who is being is a victim of violence, domestic violence, and you have a session, and the person is probably looming right there, we're out of screenshot, but putting pressure on the individual that's having the session being, involved in what they're talking about, and that's not what telehealth is all about. So it kind of makes me wonder. We've created apps for everything else, and I'm gonna put this in the atmosphere so one of y'all grab it. Let's think about there should be an app that can be developed for somebody in a situation that's dealing with domestic violence. But see, the problem with that is that even the perpetrators will have access to information because it would be publicly shared in terms of this app is out, and they'd be looking on somebody's phone, and I mean it's.
So a lot of the domestic violence websites and all of that, they have safety mechanisms for victims, and then they also try to get victims to clear their browsers and things like that. But there are there's a button that you can hit that if you're searching a website for help, so that you can get out of it if somebody comes to try to.
So there are some things technology has caught up a little and is able to help. Right now, because we're in the situation that we're in, and I'm glad you said that, because maybe somebody watching is in one of these situations and needs to know, there are websites out there Do you know of any that you can kind of put out there?
So there's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which they have a website. They have the number is 1-800-799-SAFE. Okay. But the hotline has a whole bunch of information that's actually on it.
Okay. So because this is a family, it could be pretty much a family situation. How does domestic violence affect children?
Most of the time children witness what's going on, and so we tend to think children don't hear, don't see, even behind closed doors. They hear, they know what's going on, they're fearful when they hear the things that are occurring, so they experience the trauma themselves. Wow. And so oftentimes in that whole process, children could also be abused. Many children are used against victims as a form of intimidation and manipulation, which somebody might stay in a situation because of what they're fearful what their perpetrator may do to their children. But children experience some of the same things, low self-esteem and anger, and they might have, especially smaller children, might have problems in daycare because they're mimicking the behavior that they see.
I can see that. So here's a real serious question. Do they become at risk of becoming perpetrators or being involved in relationships that kind of swing that way?
They could become at risk. One of the things when I do therapy, I always get a psychosocial history, try to find out what's going on with individuals, where they come from. And typically, our parents are our roadmaps.
Right.
And so whatever we see, that's kind of how we develop relationships. Right. Now, of course, children have resilience too. Right. So it's not that every child that witnessed domestic violence is going to be an abuser or be a victim. Right. But yeah, there is a risk to being exposed because that's it's a learned behavior and that's all you know.
Oh, okay. So, how does drug abuse specifically factor in to domestic violence? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So, I think that drug abuse is a factor to a domestic violence situation, but I want to be clear because so often people believe that the abuse is occurring because of the drugs.
Okay.
And typically there is something deeper rooted than actually the drugs. So drugs, alcohol could cause the incident to be more violent, or the behavior to be more destructive. But the issue, the under-rooted issue is still that of control. Sometimes there is some psychological stuff that goes with that, but ultimately, so drugs can be a factor, but they're more often than not, they're not the cause of the abusive behavior.
Okay. We are here with Sylvia Pauling, domestic violence specialist, and what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back with more information. This is a really rich conversation, but we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us, y'all.
Hey guys, I'm Asia Morgan, an intern at WBGR Network and a proud senior of Morgan State University. Here's a few pointers on campus and community safety. Use your eyes and stay alert. Studies show that looking a predator directly in their face causes them to be less likely to choose you as their victim because you then have the means to easily identify them. Focus on your surroundings and not your phone. And never walk alone. Walk in pairs or in groups wherever you go, because we are stronger in numbers. If that's not possible, use safety services. Universities have escort services available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Take advantage when leaving late night study sessions, parties, or anything else where you will be usually traveling alone. And when using riding services like Lyft or Uber, always check to see that you're getting into the right car. If you're traveling alone, be a backseat rider. Buckle up no matter what, and never forget to share the details of your trip with a friend or family member. Lastly, trust your instincts. If you feel like something is wrong, 9 times out of 10, it usually is. Don't ignore that feeling. This has been a message from the WBGR PSA Project.
Okay, welcome back to Just Enough, and we're here. This is our domestic violence show. We have our guest, Ms. Sylvia Pauling of the Pauling Institute, who is one of the most renowned folks in the area, and like I said before, worldwide in my eyes, on domestic violence. And she shared a plethora of information with us thus far, and it has been really engaging. And please be sure to hit the like button, the share button, take some notes, ask questions in the chat that we may try to get to, or more than likely I will get to. But I want to make sure that we're engaging you all and keeping you all abreast. Even if you want to type in the chat, good stuff, great information, please do that. And we'll also, before the end of the show, we're going to provide some information on how you can contact Ms. Pauling at the Pauling Institute if you need assistance or if you're looking for a good therapist, because to be very honest with you, second to none. She's second to none. So we talked a little bit about drug abuse being a factor, not a cause. And that's something that we want to definitely reiterate, because a lot of people may think that drug abuse is like a cause, but I'm glad you pointed that out. Let's talk a little bit about signs and symptoms of a relationship that is one that's marked by domestic violence. What does somebody look for? Like, I have a daughter, I have a daughter, son, granddaughter, nieces, sisters, aunts, and everybody is involved in relationships. We don't get to see the full picture all the time, but just like with some of the other situations like substance abuse, and I say substance abuse because that's what I'm most familiar with, and mental illness, there are signs and symptoms that one could kind of look for or recognize when they see them, because I know that there's a lot of shame involved with somebody that's a victim, and that's probably one of the barriers to them doing a lot of reporting. Because they don't want to tell the family, they feel like, because as a community, we're supposed to be strong. We're not supposed to tell, and we don't want to get other people in trouble somewhat, and I want to talk a little bit about men in a minute, but what are some of the signs and symptoms that you would look for, say for instance, so that people can kind of get a grip or kind of have an understanding of what to look for, or if they're seeing some things already?
So some of the signs is really around that whole control. And I think what happens often is the controlling behavior is hard to detect.
Okay.
So for example, you might meet someone and they're constantly texting you. But you might think, oh, they really like me, and oh, that's cute. But it becomes obsessive. So everywhere you go, somebody's sending you a text or calling you and trying to find out your whereabouts. Those are like things that we don't really look at, because it's kind of a mixed message. It could be a good thing because a person could really care about you, but it could also be a form of that control.
Okay.
And one of the things is the behavior tends to not occur in public. And so it's usually behind the closed doors that you get some of the more aggressive behavior,
Okay.
because most perpetrators, we work with them, and we don't even, we have not a clue, because the behavior is directed towards that intimate, relationship. So, and some of it is using your instinct and your gut. And when it says something's not right, or this doesn't feel right, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, you can go with what your gut and what you're feeling. And, and once someone shows you that aggressive behavior, it's probably going to escalate versus get better, especially if they are not, they don't think they have a problem, and they're not being accountable for their behavior.
So, scenario. I love scenarios. You're at a social event, family and friends, and one of let's say a female relative of mine brings her friend, and we greet each other. We hug, we laugh, we joke, and the guy that's with them calls her away. And you see an exchange where his face is all tight, and then she says a couple of things, and then she walks away. But he's standing over in the corner the rest of the night, looking at her like he wanted to jump on her. Is that safe? Is that kind of like? Because my gut would say, I'm gonna hurt Joe, because he playing games. Would that be kind of like an indicator, or you can kind of say, or is that a situation you say, I need to watch that?
It could be an indicator, but it also, I would think you would need to watch it, maybe talk to your cousin, or make sure she's okay. And not necessarily then,
Right.
while she's there, but maybe, later when you know that he's not around, just, ask her, is she okay?
Okay. So it's like, it's almost like, it's like a level of discernment people have to be able to just kind of distinguish and go with what your gut's saying, and be led, and I'm gonna say it just like I mean it, be led by the Spirit to understand that there's something not right here. Let's change gears for a minute, because this is something that that's out there, but you don't hear a lot about it. And how prevalent has it been with men who are victims of domestic violence?
So there's statistics that show like 1 in 4 men have actually been physically, abused.
Okay.
I think what happens with men is very similar to what happens with women, but the stigma attached is such that also it's not reported.
Okay.
Because, men tend to not report that they're being abused, and also there's a lot of psychological abuse with men, as well.
Okay. Can you go a little bit further with that psychological abuse in terms of men? What? Give me a little. Can you give us a little bit more?
So it could be someone being degrading.
Okay.
Or particularly in circumstances where if somebody's unemployed and don't have financial means, it could be, calling names, talking about they're not worth anything, and all of that, that type of behavior.
Okay. Now, brothers, that don't mean sit at home and not try, and because you say get a job. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. It's a little deeper than that. So men do deal with domestic violence. So what's the role of, I've heard a lot about safe houses, where victims can go. We all seen shows, the Lifetime movies. Yeah, I watch Lifetime movies sometimes. And you see where a group of individuals, the woman comes gets in contact with somebody, and it's almost like an underground railroad type of thing. They'll come, when he's not home, and whisk the family out, and they just disappear. Do those, and they go to a safe house. So are those safe houses actually are they actually effective?
They're effective on impact. So, you have to think about why most people go to safe houses. And most of the time, they're fleeing for their life.
Okay.
So when you think about, I need to get out, and I need to get out now, yes, they're extremely effective. But one of the things about the DMV, this area in particular, while it's big, it can be small. So, someone could find the person that's fleeing.
Wow.
But they can be extremely helpful, and most of them offer some form of a wraparound service.
Okay.
So the thing about a safe house is, because oftentimes we ask why don't they leave? And basically you're saying to someone, give up everything that you know.
Wow.
And go to this unknown.
Right.
It's something that you're not familiar with. Sometimes it's give up your job. Sometimes it's stop school. But the bottom line is you're giving up the familiar and you're going to a place that's unfamiliar. So there is some reluctance to do that.
Okay. How do you get somebody to actually leave? How do you get somebody to end that relationship?
They have to be ready.
Okay.
So it's not the best thing anyone can do for someone that they believes in an abusive relationship or know that they are, is to be supportive, but be non-judgmental.
Okay.
Let them know that you're here if you need to talk and all of those things, but the decision has to be their decision.
Okay.
As opposed to you making the decision for them.
Okay. So we have to, it's almost like you have to be aware of the stages of change in a person dealing with a domestic violence situation as well, because most are in contemplation for a while, where it's like it's not really happening, everything's going to be okay. Have you seen a lot of that, where people actually say, well, when you talk to them and it's a situation, and they say, well, it's not really, it's not that bad, it's only happened a few times, they minimize what's going on. Do you see a lot of that?
Well, typically it's a cycle.
Okay.
And that cycle could be, something could happen daily, something could happen once a month, something could happen every 6 months.
Okay.
But the cycle tends to go, there's a phase where things are building up, whether that's a phase of mental or psychological abuse or verbal abuse, and then there's that battering incident or that aggressive incident. But then that cycle goes around and it goes back to the honeymoon phase, and it looks just like a honeymoon. And so in that honeymoon, that's when the apologies occur, that's when the promises that it won't happen again. And so people tend to get stuck there because it's in that honeymoon phase where there's that love, hate, hope.
Okay.
I love this person. I hate what they're doing to me. But right now there's a sense of hope. But what we know is if there's no help, the cycle is going to occur again.
Okay. That was real. I like that. That was real catchy. Love, hate, hope. But then you got to have help. That's okay. Okay. I like that. So you always got something snappy. Right. So, okay. And considering all that, because what has happened, and I think I've been hearing a lot more of it, is the murder-suicide deal, where you find out after the fact that this person was involved, or people had questions, and you see neighbors being interviewed and they're saying, I knew something wasn't quite right. I just couldn't figure it out. And how does the family left behind, what kind of resources would you suggest for the family members left behind, the kids, the in-laws, the moms, everybody involved? What kind of resources would you suggest that they get if involved in a situation that ends fatally?
So there's still a need for grief,
Okay.
for grief counseling, for the whole family, especially, not especially, of equal value. It's the adults and the children. So there's a need for grief counseling, and if possible, with someone that specializes in trauma,
Right.
in murder, suicide, in domestic violence incidents, and all of that. So I believe that the ultimate form of control is death. And
Wow.
so that's when you get the murders. But I think in those murder-suicide instances, we know that there has to be some psychological distress as
Right.
well. So, it's a combination of things.
So what have you found to be effective in your working with individuals? Let me ask you this first. Do you work with perpetrators?
I do.
Okay. How's that work for you? I mean, how's that personally, right? I know that I probably would have a problem initially. I would be really uncomfortable. Just like when I've worked with addicted individuals who I find out through reading of charts and getting criminal background information that this person is a child molester, a rapist. That was one of the things that really I had to work on, taking a non-judgmental approach and seeing a person with an issue as opposed to seeing a label. Because while the label may say what they did, I've come to a place where I'm like, that's not who they are. So how did you get to a place where you were able to work with perpetrators, especially when you had to deal with a situation as tragically as your sister's, so how did you get to that place?
So when you think about the root of the problem,
Okay.
I think we're victim focused or survivor focused, which needs to be, but they're not to blame and they're not the cause of the issue. So unless we do some work with perpetrators, then we don't get to the root of the issue. And the way that what works best for me in working with perpetrators, one is meeting them wherever they are in regards to their mental health or their being, but also they have to be accountable for their behavior. So it's no kind of, I did this because da 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 da. You have to acknowledge that you have a problem.
Okay.
And so and that's all acknowledgement. Not because if they could fix it, we wouldn't be here. So
Okay. So I know that you being a therapist, you have different theories that you operate from. What theories have you found to be most effective in your work?
So most effective for people of color,
Okay.
I found it's a non-traditional theory, and it's called N2.
Okay.
It's NTU,
Okay.
psychology.
Okay.
It's actually the birth of Dr. Fred Phillips,
Okay.
a local psychologist that ran Progressive Life Center.
Okay.
He's no longer with us, but and it draws on your strength.
Okay.
So you kind of, that's the focus.
Okay.
Very African-centered, but it draws on the individual's strength, and it can be used it can be used with children, victims, perpetrators, families, everyone, and it tends to work.
Okay.
And
that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we get to our listening audience and for everybody, is that there are some Afrocentric approaches that we can utilize that work for us, created by us that work for us, and we don't have to rely on, other communities' method of doing things. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's effective for us. I like to be able to, like the approach I use with individuals and counseling, I'm real direct. I'm really direct. It's about accountability, and we look at what's good, what's the strength-based thing. I think I use a lot of theories that I don't even know the name of. I just go with what God gives me, and it tends to reach people. So I want to make sure that individuals know that there's always hope in terms of getting through a situation, and dealing with a situation, and there are resources available to you. One of the things I want to say to everybody is I want to encourage you to encourage whomever to reach out. Have somebody, especially with what we're doing on this show, because we're trying to bring information that is life-saving and life-changing, because we can save it, but we want to change it. We want to change it for the better. So let's get back. We're still talking with Sylvia Pauling, domestic violence specialist from the Pauling Institute, and we are enjoying a rich conversation about domestic violence. Okay, so we talked about men. We talked about signs and symptoms. Let's get in. Let's talk a little bit about what someone should do if they know somebody is a victim or a perpetrator. What should somebody do? Like, I know, like I'm at home, I'm sitting there, and I know my neighbor. We talk. I talk to the both of them. They seem to be pretty good people, but at night I'm hearing her screaming, I'm hearing cussing, I'm hearing furniture breaking, I'm hearing stuff going on. I hear stuff happening, and I'm hearing kids screaming. What do I do? Do I say something to him when I see him? Because men, we got that. We gonna say some stuff. Bro, you shouldn't do that. Do you intervene, or do you? What do you do?
You call the police.
Nobody like the police right now. Nobody likes the police right now. But I mean, it makes sense.
You call the police and you pay attention to what's going on. So,
Okay.
Whether that's calling the police and recording, who you spoke to or what took place once they got there. But what you don't do is not call the police, because we're not, just as humans, we're not meant to be punching bags. And typically when you hear that furniture and all of that, that is probably someone being physically abused. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, everyone's reluctant to call the police now, but we have to try to bring some sort of intervention. And it's not you're trying to make contact, because he could hurt you or still retaliate against the victim, because you may say something to him, she has no idea, and but he goes back, and then it's another abusive incident.
Okay. Call the police. We don't have to get involved on the physical nature, but we should call the police and let them know.
And one of the other things you can do is, if ever you're given the opportunity to, speak to the person, ask, "Are you okay?" Or even ask him, "Is everything okay? I hear, what's going on," and at least they're aware that. Someone knows what's going on, but what we can't do is be silent.
Okay. We got to speak up. We owe that to the victim and the families, as well as the perpetrator, because you never know what's really going on inside of somebody's head. Because sometimes, we pray prayers like, "Lord, help," and he might have prayed that prayer. His help might be prison. That just might be. So when we get down to it, so is there any have you noticed disparities in the groups of people that deal with domestic violence, like, you know, your Caucasians versus us, you know, versus Latinos, Asians?
No, I really haven't.
Wow.
Because that's one thing, domestic violence, it doesn't discriminate.
Okay.
Now, when you look at, for example, women that might go to a safe house. So you might find more people of color at a state safe house, but that's because of resources. So other people may be able to afford to just leave, or have parents that can help them relocate, or have friends that can help them relocate. So most of the time, folks at safe houses, there is some financial need as well.
Okay.
And so, you know, you do see some disparities, but the nature of domestic violence, it doesn't discriminate. Okay. It's everybody. Okay.
All right, and that's a good place for us to take another break. We want to take a break right now, and we'll be right back with more of this conversation, and we're going to be wrapping up. It'll be our last 15 minutes of the show, but I hope you all are enjoying the conversation. Again, please, share, like, but we'll be right back in a couple of minutes with more with Ms. Sylvia Pauling of the Pauling Institute. Yeah, you rolling, man.
Welcome to WBGR Network, where we are doing some amazing things in the internet media broadcast arena. We would love for you to come visit our state-of-the-art studios and be a part of what we are providing to the world. Contact us today. WBGR Network, where you go, we follow. Call us at 301-429-9247.
I hate this chair.
This one too.
We're back with Just Enough, and we're here with our guest, Ms. Sylvia Pauling of the Pauling Institute, domestic violence specialist extraordinaire. And I want to thank her in advance for the wealth of information that she shared. You all see why I had her come on. She is second to none in terms of this. She's passionate, and she's effective, But now we want to switch a little bit. We want to let people know a little bit about her private practice, because she does have a private practice, the Pauling Institute. And I want to ask you, Sylvia, what do you do at the Pauling Institute?
So I actually provide, so I'm the founder, but I provide psychotherapy training on mental health and domestic violence, and we also have a nonprofit entity that provides pro bono counseling for survivors and perpetrators of domestic violence.
Okay. You want to toss your website information out there?
Yeah, it's www.thepaulinginstituteinc.com.
Okay, thepaulinginstituteinc.com. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a link on my page, so that on the Just Enough page, so that information can be accessible to everybody, because it's a much needed resource and a valuable resource to have. Okay, so what's next on the horizon for your practice? What do you hope to get into, or how are you going to expand? Because I know you're going to expand.
I hope to have more clinicians come aboard, and right now we are using some interns for the nonprofit side of it. So hopefully we can build that component and help people in the community that needs help. The services on, as I said, the nonprofit, the domestic violence counseling for perpetrators and survivors, victims, it's a free service.
Okay. Are you? Here's the big question. Here's the money question, y'all. Are you currently accepting clients?
I am.
Okay. She's accepting clients, y'all. So make sure that you reach out. So educationally, you said you're using interns to help with some of the things. Have you found that? Do you get a lot of your interns from HBCUs? Have we started to really get involved in this arena of therapy and mental health in terms of us?
So I get both from HBCUs and other universities, but I also get people of color as well.
Okay.
And so I do think that just from the education standpoint, we don't always do enough in reference to domestic violence. So we kind of miss it in the curriculums and things like that. So when you ask, where am I going, I hope to impact, with policies and with a curriculum around domestic violence and all of that.
See, that's why I like her. See, I gotta stay close, because the overflow, I can get a little bit of the overflow. That's all I need is a little bit. But I'm glad I was able to give you, and you agreed to come on to be able to share with everybody, because this mental health is a, as you know about me, this is a passion of mine. You've seen me in various arenas. We constantly talk, and the one thing I can say, and I'm saying this in front of everybody, is I want to thank you just for the role that you've played in my life, because you've been there through a lot, and not once have you ever wavered. You've always let me know when I'm right, but then you don't hesitate. You definitely don't hesitate when I'm wrong. And myself personally, I thank you. And I know my family and some of my friends thank you, because you've kept me right where I need to be. You've been encouraging, and you are one of the strongest people that I know. I can remember, and I'm gonna share something that she gonna get me for this. When we worked together, when I first started working at Child and Family Services, and I saw Sylvia, she doesn't say much, but when she says what she says, she means what she says, and it's highly effective. And nothing, people will be running around in all kinds of fits and tizzies, and it was like nothing would shake her. So I started calling, y'all know I got names for everybody. I started calling her Cool Breeze, because nothing shakes her. It's like she's steady, she's constant, she's consistent, she's in tune, and I told her, I said, I want to be like you when I grow up, because it's like when you meet somebody that has those qualities and can help you, and can teach you something, those are the people you want to be associated with. One of the things I often say to people is, if you are the smartest person in your group of friends, it's time for some new friends. It's real simple, because you always want to be in learning mode, and that's what Sylvia does for me personally. So I know the interns that she deals with, the lives that she's touched, she's made a great impact, and I just want to encourage everybody to reach out. If you know somebody that's in a situation, if you know somebody that you may think could use the information, one of the things we want to do here is don't just keep the information to yourself. Take the information, even if it doesn't apply to you, and give it to somebody else. I want to ask Sylvia if she has any closing thoughts, any nuggets she want to drop, any inspirational quotes or anything that she wants to leave us with.
So I do want to say that if you're a victim or survivor of domestic violence, please consider getting help. If you're a perpetrator of domestic violence, please consider getting help. And just as a community, to offer support. Light bulbs go off for individuals when they feel like they have a supportive environment, because often folks that are dealing with domestic violence, they feel isolated, helpless, hopeless. And so you'll be surprised how just offering some form of support can really help. And just to say, that support is needed and will be, appreciated.
Okay. I want to read a comment. And I'm not going to call the name, but you pretty much know who it is. It says, "I thank you too, Sylvia. You were a great part of me understanding and sharing domestic violence. May God continue to bless you to help our community." And they put a couple of little hearts down there for you. That kind of sums it up, because we don't do enough in terms of us helping us. So one of the things that this show is designed to do is to give a platform to those who are helping us. We've covered mental health on an overall scale. We've dealt with children's mental health. We covered Addiction 101, parts 1 and 2. We talked about peer recovery support. And now we're at the place where we're talking about domestic violence. But I want to share with you all what's happening next week. Next week, we will be talking about treatment, substance abuse treatment, and recovery. And my guest will be my brother, my friend, my compadre, Minister Michael Moore, who will be with us and will be sharing not only information and insight as it relates to treatment, and we can break down what treatment is, some of the myths, talk about some resources. We're also going to tap on the recovery piece as well. I'm not going to share anybody's story. I'm going to let Brother Mike do that for you all. But it's going to conversation next week. You think this was rich? We're going to do the same thing again next week. But what I want you all to do for me is I want you all to consider or think about who could actually become a sponsor for the show. The Pauling Institute is one of our sponsors. They help us get started with this. We are in need of sponsorship. And if you know anybody that is willing to become a sponsor or partner with us, please reach out to me at justenoughministries@yahoo.com. Go to the Facebook page, Just Enough. Those of you who know me personally, you can go to my personal Facebook page and message me. We want to keep this information coming to the community. And to be very honest with you, we need your help. So it would be very beneficial. We have, and like I said, I'm not just pulling people who's going to talk over your head. I want people who are going to put it right on the shelf where you can get it. And if any of you know me, I'm going to always make myself accessible to connect you with whatever it is you need. Day or night, rain or shine, it doesn't matter. My passion is helping people because I believe in our ability to not only get better, but to grow in the process. And somebody sitting somewhere is thinking that, you know what, I can't, it's never, I'm not going to be any better. I can't get any better. This is the end of the road for me. No, it's not. Because over 25 years ago, I was sitting back thinking the same thing. But look at what God has done for me. And God has no respect of person. So if he did it for me, I know what he would do for you if you just reach out. I want you all to remember that Just Enough is just enough. And please share, and share again. And think about who you may know that would possibly be interested in being a sponsor, or if you yourself would like to become a sponsor. I would personally make sure that you get recognition via a commercial or, a mention during the show. But that's it for us this evening. I want to thank you all again. And if nobody told you today, I love you if nobody else does. and it has nothing you can do about it. Until next week, I will see you all then. Be safe, wear your mask, and God bless. Sylvia, this was great. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. I really do. I have to come up with a commercial for you. Which the mic go off? Did the mic go off?
I don't think so.
Well, at any rate, at any rate, you know, I appreciate you coming. Okay, so I appreciate you coming.